Hi, welcome in. My name is Sarah. I'm a mindset mastery coach and a transformational hypnotherapist. I'm also an attachment style specialist. If you would please have a look around, like, share, subscribe, and if you felt this video benefited you, just drop me a comment below. And if you would like a personal one-on-one coaching or hypnotherapy or combined session, you can let me know. You can actually book your 20-minute discovery call in the description box below. My website will be launching in about 2 weeks or so, and that'll make things a lot easier. So we're going to dive right in. Today's topic, we are talking about the fearful avoidant, and we're going to get into a little more detail about what the fearful avoidant thinks and why they act the way they do inside of the container of a relationship or a marriage. I am a healing fearful avoidant. I'm going through a divorce for all, just to be totally transparent. And that being said, I have a lot of personal insight and information that I can share with you, but I've also studied attachment styles and attachment theory as well. And what I want to share with you is hopefully very helpful and meaningful to anyone who's in a relationship with a fearful avoidant, who loves a fearful avoidant, who's starting out in a relationship with a fearful avoidant, or has even been with one for years and years. Perhaps you're the fearful avoidant watching and you want some more insight into why you do what you do. I can't tell you how learning about attachment styles and attachment theory has helped me grow as a person, as an individual, and hopefully as a partner in the future. But also, it explained my life, it explained my past, and it helped me understand on a very deep level why I've done the things I've done, why I've made the choices I have, and especially why I had so much fear inside of a relationship despite having such a strong need and desire for intimacy, closeness, and attachment. I have a video, actually have a couple videos on if both the fearful avoidant and then separate video, if the dismissive avoidant could talk, what they would tell you, right? This is sort of the things that we don't know how to say to you or what to say to you because we don't really know what's going on when it's happening. So for the fearful avoidant or dismissive avoidant, if they don't have an understanding of attachment styles or especially of what their attachment style is, they just know that they're operating under the fear and guise of typically anxiety or fear. For the dismissive avoidant, it's this need to get away and auto-regulate versus co-regulate inside of a relationship. And for the fearful avoidant, they fear abandonment. So it's more of a need to, it can oscillate between, right, anxiously attached and dismissive avoidant attached. And those two extremes present a lot of confusion inside the container of a relationship. So the fearful avoidant, otherwise known as disorganized attachment style, which I think is the perfect, just the perfect, gosh, I hate the word label. I'm going to use it though. The perfect label for this attachment style. Fearful avoidant makes sense too, but disorganized really hits home, especially for me. And I know it will for some of you because you go, oh my gosh, fearful avoidant, disorganized. Disorganized meaning you're sometime in your childhood, right? A parent or caregiver presented as disorganized in the way in which they interacted with you or interacted with each other or both. It could be that the parent or caretaker had an active addiction. It could also be that the parent or caretaker was sometimes able to emotionally connect and other times was distant. So you can understand that if the love and care and affection and attention you received was disorganized in nature, that you as a child would become disorganized in your thoughts, disorganized in the way in which you give and receive love and affection, because it's really all you know. In contrast to the dismissive avoidant, where the dismissive avoidant is really fears engulfment and they have this core defective wound. So the dismissive avoidant typically in childhood was not nurtured, was maybe their physical needs were met or financially they were taken care of. Maybe they grew up in a wealthy home. I don't know. But in some way they were severely neglected emotionally. And so they never learned how to co-regulate. They never learned how to actually communicate, but neither did the fearful avoidant. So both avoidant types never actually learned how to communicate inside the container of a relationship. And so where the dismissive avoidant tends to sort of just stonewall or go cold when things bother them, they'll bottle things up and then sort of just end the relationship abruptly. The fearful avoidant tends to express themselves in a disorganized manner. So they can go from one day or even one moment and in one conversation, they can go from being anxiously attached to basically dismissively avoidantly attached. And that's so confusing for, gosh, I have so much empathy for the partners of fearful avoidance because I think back to my marriage and how I acted and just all my relationships before then makes so much sense. I was disorganized in the way in which I approached relationships and conversations. Fearful avoidants do not know how to communicate properly because nothing was modeled to them. Nothing was modeled to them. In fact, with a dismissive avoidant, you might have parents that never argued in front of you. With a fearful avoidant, you might have parents that argued with you, vehemently, like you heard, arguing or yelling. So fearful avoidants tend to be more prone to yelling or screaming to try to get their point across. And what they're really saying is, hear me, see me, love me, embrace me, because they're afraid of being abandoned. So this is why you see them oscillate between like, please, please don't go. Oh my God, go away. Leave me alone. You're gross. You're disgusting. You've probably heard by now, like this word or phrase, going around social media when it comes to avoidance of the ick. They tend to get the ick inside of a relationship. So what does that mean? Well, it looks like something starts to suddenly bother them about you that never bothered them before. And it's something really benign. And suddenly they're going to make it into a big deal, blow it up. And suddenly they're going to end the relationship. And it sort of looks like a discard. And when I've spoken to my clients, that's what they say it feels like, especially with a dismissive avoidant, less so with a fearful avoidant. They just feel like they've been discarded and sort of just like a piece of trash. Like, I'm just going to throw you away because, oh my gosh, you picked up your fork the wrong way. And that's, oh, so gross. And you're like, what? You never mentioned this before. And they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to do a postmortem on the relationship. They just want to end the relationship sort of one-sidedly and then go on their way. A fearful avoidant, on the other hand, will can discard and will leave a relationship, but typically they're going to want to come back because they will start to go into that anxious mode, especially if you sort of keep your distance. They're going to start wondering what you're up to. They're going to start like, I wonder what they're doing. I wonder, why are they missing me? I wonder, and they're going to start to feel like they want that. They're craving that attention and intimacy again. Fearful avoidants feel very deeply. They have deep, deep feelings. They want to deeply connect and attach. They have a deep desire and need for that. They felt it sometimes. They received that sometimes in their childhood. And then at other times, it was so confusing for them, right? As a child, imagine sometimes mommy and daddy or your caretaker is really loving and present and emotionally connected. And other times they're sort of dismissive and they're avoidant themselves. And so you're like, what? So the parent or caretaker, typically, if your parent or caretaker is avoidant, you will become avoidant. If they're anxious, you tend to become anxious. Not always the case, but typically the case. It's being modeled for you, right? And we are really in a state of hypnosis from 0 to 7. We are in this state where our brain waves are functioning in the way that we will, like a sponge, absorb and retain everything that's modeled for us. And if people say something is true, we're going to believe it's true because we don't know any better. We haven't actually formed our independent personalities. We don't really know what we think or how we feel. We only know what mommy and daddy think or feel, or what the world tells us to feel, or what our teacher tells us is right or wrong. And then later on in life, hopefully, if we become securely attached, we start to really discern and sort of dissociate from other people's opinions and start to have our own opinions about life. But for a fearful avoidant, they feel they're the deepest feelers out of all the insecure attachment styles. But again, because of that disorganization in their brain with their nervous system, they don't know whether to come or go. They don't know whether to push you away or ask you to come close. This is the saddest thing, they may have this deep, burning, yearning desire to get close to you, to make love to you, to like show you how they feel, but they may never act on it, right? Especially if they feel like they might be abandoned, or if they're like, let's say you've hit a rocky road or rocky patch in your relationship with a fearful avoidant, and suddenly they're turning more avoidant versus anxious. They may be feeling anxious inside, and that anxious kind of anxiety might be churning inside of them, but you're not going to know it. They're going to present as disorganized. They're going to present as detached. And one moment they might be very loving and caring and even doting on you, and the next minute they're going to push you away because they're trying to push you away before you can push them away. They're really trying to self-preserve. And I think this goes for all insecure attachment styles. They're trying to self-preserve. They're trying to make sure that at the end of the day, they're the ones that are in control. Even my anxiously attached babes out there, you are trying to maintain some semblance of control. You are actually codependent and don't even realize it. Codependency looks many different ways. Even an avoidant can be codependent, right? It can just look so vastly different. With fearful avoidance, gosh, the spectrum is so long and big and huge because Some of you, my fearful avoidant babes or disorganized attached babes, are more, you lean more anxious, and some of you are going to lean more dismissively avoidant. And then some of you are going to oscillate every day, like 24 hours a day, from, day to night, from sunrise to sunset in the course of an argument or a conversation. The other thing you'll see with fearful avoidance is they can be really mean inside of an argument. They can be really mean and really nasty. They can say really awful things. They can just like verbally assault. They can verbally attack you. And the partner might even say, hey, you're attacking me. Hey, this feels this way. But they're not going to see it that way. They're just seeing it as this is how I express myself. Chances are they either saw a parent do that, and so they're modeling that, or their anger was repressed or suppressed as a child, and they weren't actually ever given the space to have healthy anger and express it, like I think 90% of the population. So it feels safe inside the container of this relationship to do that. And what they're really trying to do is kind of get back at mom or dad. They're trying to basically be able to finally say the things or do the things they needed to do that they never were able to do inside of that relationship with a parent. Really, we're seeking to heal the relationship with our parents inside of these relationships. And all we're ever receiving in a relationship is the mirror of self being reflected back to us. And that's a constant, and that's a really hard truth to accept. And I think most people don't know how to accept that because it's so incredibly painful to really sit with yourself minus distractions and just be with yourself. And instead of pointing or deflecting or projecting or blaming, really taking full accountability. Fearful avoidants have a really hard time out of all the insecure attachment styles taking accountability. You often will not hear a fearful avoidant apologize. You often will not hear them taking accountability. They will often sort of pawn it off on you, like, well, you're the one that did this, and you're the one that did that. And it's like the partner is like, wait a minute, are you going to take any accountability? Are you going to actually be responsible? So what my fearful avoidant babes need to learn is self accountability, is self responsibility in a radical, radical way. You need to make radical moves to accept your role as the common denominator in all of your relationships and accept that moving forward, you're going to do things different. You're going to be better. You're going to actually put the work in, and you're going to apologize. You're going to need to learn to apologize, to learn to sort of humble yourself and say, you know what, like take a piece of humble pie, take a slice and say, you know what, I really messed up there. And that's not easy for fearful avoidance. Again, it wasn't modeled for them. Healthy communication was not modeled for them. Disorganized communication was modeled. I can't even really explain how it feels to like that fearful avoidant child didn't know what to expect. They were confused constantly. Their nervous system was like fight or flight. Like, do I need to run? Do I need to hide? Do I need to, like, I want to scream, but I'm not allowed? Like, what do I need to do in this situation? They don't really know what to do to regulate themselves. They were not taught self regulation, emotional regulation. They can get triggered. And at the drop of a hat, they can get so triggered and it can go from 0 to 1,000 in about, 15 seconds. And suddenly they're chewing, they're chewing you out. They're getting nasty. They're saying mean things, and they can turn into a totally different person. Like they can go from being really nice and accommodating to just putting you down. Like they're not strangers to put downs. They're not strangers to cursing. They're not strangers to labeling or name calling or any of those things. They will really stoop to low lows when they're upset. When they feel attacked in some way, when they feel like they're going to be abandoned, which feels like an attack to them, or they feel like they're going to be betrayed or you've betrayed them. By the way, that betrayal can be totally made up story in their head that they've made up that you've betrayed them. They maybe like have convinced themselves that you've cheated. They've convinced themselves that, you're not being honest about money or you're not being honest about something inside the relationship, but in some way you have betrayed them and they feel totally validated and attacking you and throwing these insults at you and saying these things. But again, they're also so dysregulated. They're so disorganized and dysregulated in the way in which they're approaching you in this relationship and the way in which they communicate. They don't even know what they're doing. They're not even aware of what they're doing. I'm not trying to excuse their behavior. I'm rather trying to explain it so you have a better understanding of your loved one, whether it's a friend, a family member, or a spouse or partner, or maybe it's yourself. What better thing to do than to understand yourself and understand your motivations, understand your triggers and your reactions so that you can do things differently next time around. The first step is awareness, but that's not enough. We can't just have awareness about, okay, I know my attachment style and go on our way. We're bound to repeat those same cycles with different people. We will keep on attracting in a partner that will trigger us in the same way, even more, like deeper and deeper, deeper and deeper layers and levels until we finally meet ourselves. And that's what partners are, is we're meeting ourselves in the reflection of a mirror. That's all relationships are, guys, until both partners have done enough work. So I'm going to leave this video there. I think that's enough knowledge and enough education on fearful avoidance for one day. Take it in, rewatch it if you need to, send it to anyone you think can benefit, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much for being here, and I hope that this has been helpful for you and informative.